Live from PressCorps World Headquarters, this is Zero Dark PressCorps. It's a live post-war call-in show, hearing your first-hand accounts and war stories of battles from the previous conflict. So join the Discord right now through the link below. Hop in the general voice channel and get ready to share your stories. Tonight's featured guest, Clapfoot Developer KrazyFlyinChicken. And now, your host, 9-time winner of the Geoffrey Jennings Award for Excellence in Journalism, Geoffrey Jennings.
Spot 05 would like us to know that he is first in queue.
I think, well, technically Kovac was, but he actually beat him to it. But regardless, welcome to Zero Dark PressCorps. As the intro explains, it's an after war kind of gig. But yeah, he's been getting a little more intense lately, but I don't mind it one bit. I like I said, midnight intensity. But regardless, joining us today, as it said here, Kovac here in the PressCorps, Mothman 47 of the PressCorps as well, and Clapfoot Developer KrazyFlyinChicken. Gentlemen, how are you? We'll start with Kovac. How are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good evening.
Well, the 37th is in the books, and everything has been solved. Not a single problem, just as we predicted. But that's where we're at, basically. But yeah, at the onset of the war, actually, I'll take this time to plug FoxholeStats.com. FoxholeStats.com by Hayden gives you there's now an incredible feature that now shows in an MP4, very easy to watch MP4 file, the front line as it developed, roughly the front line as it developed throughout the wars, and it's going to get even better here with some new API as they develop with the zones and whatnot. But plenty to talk about there. But FoxholeStats.com. It seems that the Collies had a very spirited start here in the beginning of the 37th, but then stalemated just as they are beaten back as they went into Callahan's Passage and even a little bit more. Or, sorry, Callahan's a little bit more northeast, and then stalemated in the center, and then finally a collapse of the front here as the Wardens came back in it during the now infamous Warden weekend. Gentlemen, what's your hot take on this? We'll start in order here. Kovac, what's your take on the 37th? Interesting things?
Honestly, probably wasn't really much of a question of who was going to win. Anyways, Colonials have been stagnating since very many wars ago. Obviously, because of school and stuff.
Possibly. I mean, the Wardens go to school as well.
True.
But yeah, Mothman, what's your hot take on it?
So what I did draw from the beginning of the war is that the Colonials did put up a tougher fight up until about midpoint of the war. That there was a lot more coordination I saw. And a lot of the things that I did notice was that Colonials had stopped really kind of carrying that chip on their shoulder about losing so much. They've just kind of resigned themselves to the fact that if they don't win, it's fine. They're just going to take a whole bunch of Wardens down with them, and that's kind of what happened. There was a lot of stiff defense.
Oh, well, that's the sandbox for you. If that's the attitude they're going to carry into these things, well, that's what they choose to do. And then KFC, I think we're all excited to hear this opinion, but same question to you, how long until the game's dead?
We were really expecting a considerable drop-off of players around this time of the year. It happens every year. We don't know what it is. It's something about going back to school and just the cycle of games in general. The AAA titles all start launching around this time. We do always see a dip in players at this time. So we're not all that surprised. Yeah, we're not all that surprised, but that's okay because the whole plan for this one was this patch isn't even really designed to be meant to appeal to new players. It's meant to appeal to the ones that exist. So we're just addressing community feedback. And then next, the big one will be in the winter. It's always our biggest one of the year.
Mm-hmm. And it's honestly not even just during this time of the year that we see drop. It's during this time of the development cycle when, unfortunately, the luster of the excitement of the previous update has now faded, and now we're left with some of the side effects that may have reared their ugly head. Some long-term effects, or some long-standing side effects, some new ones that some may have seen coming, some may have not. But hey, that's where we are, and then double punch there. Oh well, game's not over yet. I don't think so. Not for a while.
Which I'm sure we'll hear all about when the callers start calling in.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So I've rated Dr. Ponsonby's stash. I've been needing it lately. I'm actually this tonight's show is actually an hour late because I had a previous appointment and they were 2 hours late. 2 hours late to that, and we're not responding. So, ladies and gentlemen, stay true to your appointments. Otherwise, other people won't. And yeah, keep in contact. But regardless, we'll get to callers very much soon enough. But update here on the Foxhole Competitive League. The only image I have here that says Foxhole Community League, but it is the Foxhole Competitive League here, Season 4, 2019. And we had some exciting matches here in this past weekend. Did any of you catch the game? And at KFC, you might have got a chance there.
yeah. No, I was on it, so I was playing in one of.
Salt and Pepper. How'd you gentlemen do?
We won. We won pretty well. I mean, third put up a really good fight, but we won it after 2 hours. The game that happened before ours, which was on Saturday, was a fair bit closer, but we learned a lot from both of them. So
yeah, Russians were hoping to reclaim some prestige for their motherland, but unfortunately, you Salt and Pepper chaps had to shut it down once again. But hey, that's the bones of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had the advantage of having a couple of practice runs beforehand. So we had a practice run before the season even started, and then we had a run against Talks before playing against Third. So we just had that little bit more of experience, and I think that just worked a lot.
Yeah, there's actually been a surprising amount of practice matches and scrimmages. I actually wasn't expecting that during the season. They're kind of just whenever they pop up. But hey, if you're still interested in playing in the Foxhole Competitive League, I think you can just sign up for a scrimmage. Definitely, obviously, the tournament's underway, but maybe you can get into one of those if there's room. Who knows? You can practice your shadow dancing, which I'm sure won't be touched anytime soon. Maybe in winter.
Or revolver nerfs? No way.
Maybe not. All right, well, let's get to it. Everyone's itching to get their hot takes in. So let's start off here. We've implemented the call queue channel here in the PressCorps Discord. PressCorps Discord, which you can access through the link below. Just click on that picture there, lovely picture, and go ahead and type anything into the call queue channel, and you'll have claimed your spot. So joining us here tonight on Zero Dark PressCorps is Spots 05. Spots 05, how are you doing this evening?
Good. I'm doing good this evening.
And any questions, comments, concerns, or war stories you had to share for us here for the 37th?
I'm actually going more on a rant about. This is more of a rant about what happened in Callahan's Passage and more about what we could have done to win over Callahan's Passage.
For the record, who are you fighting for this past war?
Colonials.
Colonials, okay.
Yeah, we were during this war. During this war, Callahan's Passage, after we successfully take out Solace Gorge. I think it was the Lynn of Mercy. We successfully take that reason we're pushing to Callahan's Passage. We were checking through the main path into Callahan's Passage from, I think, Crumbling Post into Overlook Hill, which the Wardens knew we were going to attack from. We were attacking that way so much, like it was the main path that the Wardens had so heavily defended. Well, we've kind of attacked that way for a couple of days by now, like real life days actually, and it was a back and forth. But then some people started placing watchtowers on their flank, and one thing I realized was their flank is not that well defended. They didn't defend their flanks; they were only focusing on the main path in. And I was trying to tell people, why are we wasting troops, BMATs, supplies on this run when we can just simply flank them? Just do a Germany and basically walk into their base, take some buildings down and knock out their town hall.
Can you define real quick? Can you define "Do a Germany" for me?
Like a sleep plan, like 1940s Belgium or Netherlands, like something like that.
Okay.
Go around the border.
There's a lot of things you can extrapolate from "Do a Germany." So thank you for clarifying. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah, basically we could have walked around their lines. As well as that, the other city north of it, Solis Gorge, was pretty undefended. Some CRG boys got into the city and were trying to knock it out, but there was one guy there. We couldn't do anything about him because he was running around and we couldn't do anything about it with HE grenades equipped. We could take Solis Gorge as well, which is another great city to take because it's in that little corner up there. It's kind of tough to take from both angles. And we could have distracted the Warrens through that way as well, causing them to split their front easily and make it easier to take Overlook Hill. But most of our team were focused. We're just keep on focusing on this one little passage because why don't we take the most logical way in? Have you ever heard about the most logical way? The enemy will think that you're going to take the most logical way. Think about the most unlogical way to take a fight.
What is that? And what is the most illogical way to pick a fight?
Go around their lines. Go around the most logical way. Instead of attacking Pas-de-Calais, attack Normandy. We should have just. It might have been a little bit longer drive for Logi drivers, but we can easily defend in that area because it was one little river that could be easily defended. The bridge was down there as well, I noticed, but we could easily just drove off road for a little bit of time. It was that easy, but we lost the war eventually because that front was pushed back all the way back, and Atlantis was a pretty good front as well, but we were mainly pushed back from Callahan's Passage, causing us to really lose the war. Callahan's Passage was the major front that we should have focused our time and effort on.
Is that the turning point, do you think, Spots?
Yeah.
From your point of view, you think Callahan's Passage, the high water mark the Collies had into Callahan's Passage, do you think that's where it was? That's where it happened?
Yeah, that's where it happened, mainly. But I wanted to talk about the new update now.
Okay.
Well, I'm really happy that for the longest time, howitzers were good weapons, were good offensive weapons that you could have used. Or in any case, they were good defensive, offensive weapons. But they didn't really have any versatile. The howitzer shells were pretty expensive because 100 B mats combined with 20 HE mats, kind of expensive to produce. But now with the new variants, this is going to spice up the howitzer gameplay a lot because now we have the dedicated anti-infantry shell, aka the gas shell, and a good covering shells, like different uses for the howitzer now. I'm pretty happy they did that. And I did test around with the new spawn feature, which is I'm 100% for because it makes it way much easier to respawn in an area that's under attack, like way much easier.
You know, I'm gonna lean on KFC here, see if we can extrapolate some good behind the scenes, if possible. How long had you been working? Can you say the team had been working on the shells, all the fire support shells, artillery, howitzer, mortar, etc.? How long have they been working on that?
That's a complicated question.
Sure. Because it's not like you start and then you don't stop until it's finished. It's pick it up and go, I would imagine. Pick it up where you can.
Yeah, plus a lot of it was, a lot of the programmer work was, a lot of work was sort of delayed because we were working on all sorts of features. We've been trying to shift our focus from working on just singular features and trying to strive a little bit longer to get towards the end goal of 1.0. So we're not just working on update 29 over the last couple of weeks. We've been working on a little bit of things for update 30 and a little bit of things more further on down the road. Trying to be more efficient with the time that we're using. And then we just sort of, like, the shells themselves were heavily Matt. He did a lot of the effects. I'm having a brain fart.
No, that's fine.
The graphics.
I was gonna say the flare animation, that must have taken some time to actually get that worked out.
It did them impressively fast. But I think, I'd say that Matt really did a lot of the work there. But not to say that the programmers weren't doing their bit too, but they've been pulled 3 ways from Sunday. 3 ways. We got all sorts of stuff sort of in the works right now.
As well as that, I'm pretty happy about the new spawning feature as well because Because I did like the idea of like one like star base, but it's kind of annoying when you're trying to get to take for example, you're like in Deadlands, you're trying to get to the front line, probably up in near Callahan's Passage, near the border of Callahan's Passage. Now you have to spawn in salt farms, walk all the way there. Walk all the way there if you basically walk all the way there, set your spawn. If you did forget set your spawn and fight. If you did forget your spawn, you have to do that long walk all the way over again. Or even worse, you were run over by some random Logi player who didn't pay attention to the road, and you have to walk all the way back up there again. I like that feature. It just makes it easier for you to like, oh hey, I want to head to, oh hey, we're doing a massive assault on, I don't know, let's just say Abandoned Ward. I'm going to spawn at this fort near Abandoned Ward, and I can help my boys attack through that angle.
Oh my god, the spawn system is so cool now. Like I was marveling at it, like the work that this was again primarily the programmers, but they were like entirely the programmers, but they like if you look at the starting screen when you first log into the war, you can see like where the front line is just by what's flashing at you. So you can see like, oh, like this is where all the action is. Everybody set their spawn here. So you like the actual front line is flashing for you now, which begs the question: did we solve the age-old noob question of where's the front line?
Oh my god!
We shall see.
Oh my god, that was one of the greatest lines. Oh, actually, I have a funny noob story as well. So this noob spawned into I think it was the Lynn University. He's like, hey, I'm new to this game. Do you have any suggestions? I said, oh yeah, you can go to the front lines. Like, no, I want to do logistics. And this is from a new player, so I was just like, wait a moment. This new player wants to do logistics, not frontline combat. What?
It's more common than you think. Honestly, the fact that you have games like that janitor simulator where you clean up after an FPS game, the scary.
Or Euro Truck Simulator.
Or Euro Truck Simulator. It's actually quite. It's actually it's a larger minority of players than you really think.
Yeah, but I actually said, oh yeah, you should. I recommend you head towards Westgate. That's because that's a big Logi city. I should just head there and ask for someone to teach you. Because my main skill is mainly frontline combat. I'm a good player at frontline combat and good at Logi, but I prefer more frontline duty. But I do hop on Logi if we're running low on supplies and we desperately need them.
Well, that's I think that's pretty much how it's supposed to work there. But anyway, Spots 05, thank you so much for your input here in the 37th. And yeah, hope you have a good time in the next war. Hope you have a fun time out there fighting war. Okay. Hope you have fun with the war. All right, coming up next here, next caller here in the queue is Terrento. Terrento, thank you calling in for Zero Dark 30. Also, I have put up an image here on the radio. I've put up an image of the starting position of the 37th war. It says day 183 with that, or day 180 whatever, but that's just because they hadn't reset yet. That's how it looked like, minus the regions there on the top left, on the bottom right. Unfortunately, Foxhole Stats does not quite yet block those out, and in fact, the next war is going to be a full Monty. But regardless, Terrento, thank you for calling in. What do you have for us here? Hot takes on the 37th.
Oh, hi. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's really an honor to be talking with you guys.
The pleasure is all ours.
I wanted to talk about early war vehicles being kind of disposable or feel useless at the late war. Like I'm sure we have all considered this, right? Like how it's so imbalanced that when the armored car gets unlocked for the first time, people use it like it's tanks, and it feels like tanks because the tank is still not advanced. But it's so strange that as time goes on, they just go in the garbage bin, like it's nothing. The only ones that use them at late war is just newbies or people that just want to meme around, myself included. Actually, one time I got an armored car with a Russian guy and called myself the Bladmobile.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and
I like that.
I was spamming the siren on my microphone, calling myself the Warden. It was a great time.
I think we've said this on past shows, but I think it's safe to say, and KFC can reconfirm this, that in a perfect world, nothing in Foxhole should ever truly be obsolete. Is that correct?
Yep.
In a perfect world. Obviously, that's not the case we have now, but in an ideal situation. So, Terrento, any ideas since you brought it up here first and foremost, or you can divert to us?
I mean, this problem goes on to almost all vehicles early war, armor car included, but also popular opinion, the field machine gun,
That's
and
another
to
popular
some
one.
extent it's just that if I've talked to some people and it most of them say that it feels like, for example, the light tank is just the half track. It does the half track's job and it does better. So people say, why even use the half? Like, I don't know if you guys think like me, but I always think that each vehicle should have their own purpose, even if it's situational, even if it's just minor, as long as they're not completely useless and people call it garbage late war. I think it's what we call good balance.
Easier said than done. Do you have any specific implementations in mind off the top of your head, putting you on the spot there?
Yes, I do. Well, specifically for the AC. Not a while ago, I've made a suggestion on the official Foxhole Discord channel, and I've mentioned that the AC, since it's an early war vehicle, it of course should not outshine the half tracks, the FAs, much less the. A suggestion that I propose is that these, for example, instead of directly buffing the AC, we should make it less vulnerable to other things. For example, the AT turret, yeah, the AT turret. Yeah, I think that's the name.
The official name is gun turret, but we know what you're talking about.
Yeah. No, yeah. Thanks for reminding me.
That's fine. Honestly, I call it the AT turret myself.
Yeah. But I propose that the gun turret should not target all vehicles. Since I consider it as a mid-war to late-war tech, it should of course be effective against battle tanks, normal tanks, half tracks, but things like ACs, light vehicles like trucks, cranes, even armor cars. I don't think it's fair to have them targeted. And because I thought also of the gun turret spam that since they only cost BMATs now, and because of the sunkens that they're kind of overshadowed by the gun turret. So a suggestion that I made is to make make all the light vehicles, but specifically the armor car, to not be targeted by the 80 turret, and to remain consistent. But if you don't like it, that's okay. Make it so also armor cars do not trigger mines. It's a controversial change, I know, but I mean, it's to keep things consistent and fair.
But actually, honestly, the thought of light vehicles not triggering, I mean, that already happens. Light vehicles, not all vehicles trigger mines. So just moving the weight tolerance to armored cars, allowing it to go, that seems like an easy enough thing to justify. I'm curious about how do you justify gun turrets not, AT turrets not targeting light vehicles?
Simply because the gun turret base is, look. You can contest me if you want, and I'll listen. But I think the gun turret is just a little bit too easy to make and too good for its. I always thought that the gun turret should be put strategically. I'm sorry, I can't English. Okay.
That's fine. That's fine. You're doing better than my Russian.
Oh, thanks for the compliment, I guess. But I always thought that there are this heavy thing that of course should be effective against tanks. So to stop heavy pushes, of course, but to also target light vehicles that are almost no threat to them, it feels like, for me, at least for me, overkill. And also because the Sunkens also need their light. When I made this suggestion, I thought of it like as a way to nerfing a bit the AT gun, but also buffing the AC, while also putting Sunkens uh, more room to breathe, because people will now consider Sunkens, building Sunkens for to stop also light vehicles. So instead of only building gun turrets all over the place, you will have couples of gun turrets and Sunkens to stop all vehicles.
I'm
That's what I
processing
thought
it.
anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah,
go.
that was my idea for the AC. I didn't think of the FMG.
That's fine. We'll go with that first. Kovac, you were about to say something?
Another way you could possibly buff the ACs, maybe to make the reconnaissance purposes easy to fulfill by like giving it a hatch, larger view range.
The AC?
Like a hatch for the commander,
Like on the light tank.
Oh,
Oh,
they already have a hatch.
He's talking about the armored car.
Let the driver go.
Oh, I see. But I mean, like, I don't know. My biggest gripe with the armored car is that it's already overused. Like, my bigger concern is like, how do we get people to use like the field machine gun?
Yeah, that's tricky. I mean, would you even consider just removing it altogether?
I mean, yeah, but I mean, it's already done. I would just created a new model for it too, so it's all pretty now too.
You know, Blazer in the audience wrote in and he said, "I thought they already confirmed upgrades or variations for vehicles." KFC, can you confirm that possible lapse in memory?
I'm afraid I'm gonna need you to pull up the exact like quote there, Blazer, because I don't know what you're talking about.
I think the only thing I can think of is like that hint of like concept art, so not a confirmation, but concept art of the AT variant of a half track.
Yeah, I'm kidding. I know. I've seen it. I know, and it's like sometimes Mark. Okay, here's the real truth, right?
Sure.
Like sometimes before the dev streams, like we're neck deep working on stuff, and some of this stuff is like months away. Some of it is weeks away. Some of it is days away, and we're planning to release it as soon as possible, and then stuff gets moved around at the last minute, like right before the patch and shit. And that was like one of those things that we were working on that we were like, okay, this is definitely coming in the next patch. And it was like a week until the next patch. And then the next patch starts rolling around and it's like, oh crap, we don't have time for all this stuff. We got to cut some things. And that thing got cut. And then it's not like the work gets thrown out. It just gets pushed down the road until we stop looking at it. But it's still there. It's still coming.
It really is amazing. Again, Terrento, we'll go back to the FMG, I promise. But it really is amazing because you know, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, because it disseminates, you know, look to the dev stream and the dev blogs as Bible in terms of you know, release schedule, things to anticipate and whatnot. And it's great because no matter how many times you guys will, you gentlemen will put, you know, all this is a work in progress, nothing is confirmed. Don't hold your breath. Every variation of that, no matter how hard you bold that or italicize it, it still becomes Bible, right? It becomes law, canon law, that it's gonna happen. So yeah, that's just the reality of our situation. That sometimes, yes, something will be hinted at in the dev stream, and then it just never materializes until maybe 6 months down the road.
Oh man, yeah, like the freaking uniforms.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned uniforms like 8 times. Helping Hans was messaging me the other day, going like, where the hell are our uniforms? I really want my uniform.
They're stuck in the quartermaster corps, and they're not willing to send them out. All right, they're in development, and the head quartermaster doesn't want to
Yeah, exactly. Blame the quartermasters.
There's a pacing to this too. There really is, because once you release some, well, at least I think there is, but I would argue that once you release a part of a feature, you're kind of committed because that has been introduced into the ecosystem. That is now a part of the game that everyone takes part in, and there really is no take backsies. So
Oh, totally.
yeah, so it's like as soon as you introduce some uniforms, if it's half baked, you can't take it back unless you really want to piss everyone off. So in my opinion, it's better to kind of just not release it until it is ready. I mean, that's literally your whole philosophy, but I'm just reiterating here that that's kind of what has to happen. And
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
actually, the complete reverse has happened to us too.
Okay.
And Mark will tell you this. That sometimes there'll be something that we're not sure we're going to add, and we're like, you know what, man, like port bases. We're going to get rid of these port bases, and we talked about it for months and months and months, and we had all these plans drafted up, and then things got. And then one day Mark was like, you know what, I'm just going to announce it, and then he announced it on the dev stream, and then it was like, okay, we have to get rid of port
Everyone
bases
went nuts.
now.
Everybody lost their mind when that happened. I remember that.
And then we had to sit down and figure it out. And I'm not even kidding. We hadn't had it completely figured out when he announced that we were removing them.
It's a press release. It's a press. My goodness, what am I trying to say here? Press conference. It's a press conference. It's like you're holding a press conference, and what kind of says has to happen behind the scenes. Anyway, sorry, Terrento, FMG. What are your thoughts? How do you make that? If it even is worth saving, how would you save it?
Oh, the FMG. Well, it's even trickier than the A.S. because one of the main problems with the FMG, it's vulnerability against almost everything. Like I don't think there's a problem with the FMG on itself. I think there is a problem with the coordination behind it. Like I've seen some FMG plays like used by clans or really organized operations that they really work very well. They're a very good defensive weapon. They if they're used correctly, they can stop any infantry push. But then you have the people that think the FMG is God and will use it like it's a motorcycle. And guess what? They get flanked, they get fragged, and all that jazz.
You described actually the top two counters against an FMG is flanks and fragging. Off the top of your head, everyone, what is the bullet resistance, small arms resistance on an FMG?
I mean,
high.
From anywhere from like I would say a 45-degree angle from the spalls, it's pretty resistant. As soon as you get past that angle, though, then you can shoot one of the gunners or the assistant gunner, and then it's pretty much.
I mean, would it just be more effective if you had, if you covered 3/4?
I mean, the way I've always seen FMGs implemented from the warden side, at least in my experience, is they'll push up with an FMG and they'll have a crap ton of infantry on either flank just to protect that flank, and the FMG is basically free to push up, destroy defenses, creep up closer and closer to the front. I do notice that an FMG, when it's put in a choke point, is a marvelous invention, especially when it's protected by sandbags.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
God, they're so good at killing armored cars too.
Yes, they are.
If you catch it off guard. They're like they're in the early war. They're actually like the ultimate rivals, and it all depends on who can get the jump on who, or who's silly enough to fall into the other's trap. But then, how would you make it relevant in day 400 of a war? Light tanks are already out. Battle tanks are already out in the field. Of course, it's folly to think that an FMG should be able to survive a battle tank. But I think we can even just while we're brainstorming, because it's brainstorming, get more radical with it. I've seen suggestions with saying that every vehicle should have a unique ability, kind of like how the LUV is a mobile watchtower.
Yes.
How would you translate that into other things? So I've heard people say that give the motorcycle spotlight, and then you can shine it on bushes, and then it'll reveal people in the bushes. Just something like that for every single thing to make it unique. I think that's the route that it could go if it's possible.
Well,
Yes, I love. Sorry. Go.
No, um, it's just one idea that got in my head. The moment you say that, maybe for look, this is just a rough idea, okay? I did not
Sure.
think about this at all.
That's fine.
But maybe for the AC, since it's a recon vehicle and an anti-infantry thing, what how about an overload mode where you can have like, I don't know, 90 rounds on its clip, but after using it kind of overheats and you have to take a longer reload time. I don't know, something like that.
Something like that, and only that can do it. You said that was for the FMG, right?
No, that was for the AC.
Oh, for the armor car. Okay, sure.
Yes,
But then, but then only the armor car would be able to do it. Then you have this hard-hitting thing they could really use for anti-infantry purposes. I don't know. It's something to toy with.
I was going to go back to the FMG real quick, thinking about what we could do, but a possibility that could be implemented, or something that people could really kind of expound on, just expand on that thought. What if you took the FMG, right, and at a certain point in the war, it just becomes kind of kind of an inconsequence of war. You have plenty of them lying around. You don't really need them. Then the ammo's being used for something else, or the ammo's not being produced anymore. If you still have a stockpile of ammo and you still got a couple of those laying around, and you're at a town where it's kind of needs to be vitally defended, maybe implement something in the works where an engineer can convert that FMG into a man-controlled machine gun bunker that has the same HP as a Foxhole, but instead of having an automated defense, it has to be manned and fired from that position.
Oh, so it's like a double down ability.
Pretty much.
That's actually some real RTS stuff. Just make it into a structure. I don't know. That's a thought, but yeah, running away with just the idea that give every vehicle an ability, a unique ability. Maybe not the battle tank, because it's got the ability of being able to eat anything. But
battle tank is already huge. Tonk.
Yeah, the ability is the battle tank. But right, I don't know. Just something to make things relevant. That's really what we're going for. But anyway, Terrento, if you didn't have anything else, thank you so much.
Well, I still have one thing to say before I go. We were talking about vehicle things. Look, this is one fun idea I thought of a long time ago, and I doubt this will make it into the game, but it's still fun to think about it. Like I thought of an upgrade for the battle tank. What if there was an upgrade for the battle tank that it would lose its turret, but it could act like you could permanently deploy as a forward base.
Okay.
Like I know it's stupid and like not realistic at all, but it's just something that I thought. But
it's a thought.
Yeah. You're kind of saying like remove the turret of the battle tank, convert it into a CP, and then actually put some sandbags around the side.
Pretty much, yeah.
Just an outpost without a stockpile, maybe.
Pretty much.
That'd be interesting. Hey, it's a thought. It is a thought, and also the thought of not necessarily upgrades, straight upgrades that, well, of course you got to have the upgrade for this vehicle, otherwise it's useless. No, it maybe a modification. So there's trade-offs there. So the vanilla is always possible. And in fact, I think I'm going to wait until the next caller because they might talk about this. But yeah.
Yes.
But
side grades.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. Yeah, I was just going to say side grades, but again, I really appreciate you guys for hearing me. Sorry if I was too intrusive.
No. That's fine by me. I love it. I love it. We'll get all the time in the world for you, for everyone here. Anyway, Terrento, thank you so much for calling in. Appreciate it.
Oh, no worries, man.
All right. Popping in here, Commander Rod, how are you doing?
I'm doing really, really good. I apologize for being late. I just got home.
That's fine by me. In fact, the Commander Rod here, ladies and gentlemen, has not only been the PressCorps liaison for the Foxhole Competitive League, except when he can't make that because he is doing shoutcasting for even bigger things, other huge esports, such as in what was it? What was the name of the E-Liga?
It was Iliga Sul's MBAX R10 World Cup for Pro Evolution Soccer. So that was pretty fun.
How many viewers? How many viewers?
We got a total of 21,000, I think, at
That's
one
amazing.
point. It was incredible.
Commander Rod's the real deal, ladies and gentlemen. He, yeah.
I wouldn't say that I'm the real deal. That wasn't my first big broadcast like that. But
yeah, that's how you become the real deal. Your deal has materialized into reality.
No, I appreciate it.
Rod, we're all proud of you. Now, will you shut the fuck up? We're gonna go into the next next call here, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
Liquid Popsicle, Liquid Popsicle of the 128th AR. How are you?
Hello. I'm sorry for the transmission quality. I'm not actually in the studio. For those that aren't aware, I'm actually still on leave.
You are literally doing better than your transmission is already doing better than half of the callers we usually have. Liquid, you're on leave from what?
I'm on leave from active duty right now because over the last war, our services haven't really been requested by Callahan that much, sadly. Right. Our artillery hasn't really been a good place. There's never really been a drastic reason to use it, and on top of that, we just can't spare the resources for it. Which I'm really, really grateful he put us on leave instead of just decommissioning our battalion entirely.
Right.
Thank God. But we're hopefully we've got some new orders coming in, and we're going to be a lot more active this next war with these new ammunition types that have been developed.
That's what we were waiting for. Everyone here at the studio is so glad to hear that the 128th, except Mari, because he's gonna
tell him we're sorry. Tell him we're sincerely sorry that he's going to be on the receiving end again.
Don't apologize. Don't apologize.
Don't apologize for more. He's already half a bottle in bourbon already.
Yeah. I think we're all rating Dr. Ponsonby's cabinet tonight, but
we are. See, the second that word came out that there were advances in artillery shells, you know how Dr. Ponsonby's cabinet, it squeaks whenever it opens. It felt like an orchestra.
Oh yeah. Mari, you should have heard the ruckus we had when we found out when news finally got down the grapevine to my men. It was honestly, my phone was ringing so bad that I couldn't even. I like as soon as I'd pick up one call, I'd just get another, and I have that. Hang on, I'm gonna put you on hold. Oh my God, you haven't heard of those yet?
No.
Ah man, they're brand new.
Dude, Roughnet, we communicate with strings and cans, okay? Like, that's what we do.
Oh, man.
Down in the dirt, that's what we do. You should fancy artillery
brand new fancy technology that I was
Make sure if you don't spill your tea.
But,
KFC, when are the carrier pigeons getting released? Tomorrow. That's what I thought. Liquid. What are your reactions to all these shells being about to be unleashed here in the upcoming 38th conflict? What's your reaction? What's the 128th reaction? I'm so excited to hear about it.
If I'm going to be completely honest,
sure,
I'm a little bit concerned.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Because we're showing we've done some experimenting with these new shells that we've been given, and from what we've seen. Even with the realization that hey, we can't put as many resources into these green ash shells because we fire so many of them that it's not really going to stack like it used to and be such an extreme gas cloud. But it's one of those things where it's just such a multi-tool, and we're going to honestly have trouble finding situations where we are going to use the other two shell types, especially since. The standard ammunition that we've been using for so long, it takes HE mats. It's hard to make, and its damage output, it's decent, right? It can get the job done, but it's fairly anemic to something compared to like NFA, which it's much more efficient in what it does, and we can't use standard shells like we used to wall off an area. Gas will do that much better, and then. Also, finally having illumination rounds, albeit on the mortar. I'm a little sad that our engineers couldn't figure out a way to get them into our howitzer shells, but I can understand that they'd probably shatter as soon as the gun was fired. But there are a lot of advances coming along, and I know for a fact we're not going to be the only artillery group out there this next coming war. But it's going to be much more difficult to control the zone. It definitely is.
I have
We're
an
up for the
image
challenge.
that is horribly cropped. There you go. That's a very poor quality image. I have an image here. It's actually from the dev stream itself. It's at the table. Apologies if you cannot read that on the radio, but it's a table of all the different types of shells you have, and let's go down the list here. For the mortar, you have. I'm going to skip all the standard ones because every single piece of fire support here still has their standard vanilla shell, and then we don't need to go into tank shells because we're used to those. But for the mortar, you have the shrapnel shell that is anti-infantry, and you have the flare shell that illuminates and reveals. Howitzer, you have the smoke shell, non-lethal, but does provide concealment, and then the green ash.
It's lethal. I can promise you, it's lethal.
Smoke shell?
Yes.
It does cause damage.
Consider it. You've got a 152 millimeter shell, right?
Mhm.
And it's got a fairly thick metal casing because it has to survive being fired, and it has an explosive charge inside of it that actually pushes the smoke out. When that sucker lands and goes off, it does send shrapnel in all directions. Same thing with the green ash shell. The green ash shell is a smoke shell with green ash in it, essentially.
Mm-hmm. And then the green ash shell is going to be the big killer, possibly, for this war. That's the one everyone has their eyes on. We'll see how that plays out in the next Zero Dark. For the field artillery, you have the heavy explosive shell that's anti-structure, specifically anti-structure, and then the armor-piercing shell that is designed for heavy armor. Ladies and gentlemen, we finally have an official anti-tank gun that can be manned by soldiers out on the field. It just can't depress lower than 75 meters, but it's an anti-tank gun regardless. Liquid, what are you most excited for and then worried about? You said you worried about the gas shell. What are you actually excited about in terms of all these types of shells?
Well, I'm actually extremely excited for the gas and the smoke. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried might take a little bit away from tactical usage, but we'll definitely be using all of them in combat. The shrapnel shell for the mortar is extremely cheap. It's extremely easy to get. You know, it's a nice replacement, and half the time, we'll use mortars on infantry anyway. But the flare shell is the real kicker, right? Mm-hmm. Because usually it gets nighttime, we're blind, we can't see anything. Infantry is probably a good 50-100 meters that way, and there's no daylight out. I can't even see my hand in front of me, right? If we're considering setting up a spotting team, but we are going to be using those flare shells at night to spot infantry targets and soft targets and even, structures very, very easily. And then we'll be able to get numbers on them, and we'll be able to continue our barrages through the night at the same effectiveness as the daylight.
Let's see.
So you're hoping to create a situation where the Colonials are afraid of the light. They see a light, and it's followed by 10 gas rounds.
Oh yeah. See, earlier, they were afraid of the smoke back when we were using smoke spotting. Of course, it's highly situational. There are a few instances where it's actually beneficial, but apart from that, we have eyes, we can see. They work just fine. But the flare shells are going to scare some people because they're going to see the flare shell, and then they're going to hear the rain start coming down, and then all they're going to see is green.
Well, let's see how that pans out. Let's see how that pans out for you. KFC, what were you saying?
Nothing.
It's interesting.
Nothing.
Go ahead. All right.
I'm just excited that the gas shells are going to properly resemble what Taco Tuesday looks like in the.
They cook enough. Couple of questions that have come up, not just on the subreddit, not just in this audience, but also in Discord and whatnot. KFC, is there actually just the room? Is there still a reason to have regular shells?
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
I think every shell has its purpose.
Mm-hmm. Even the vanilla
I
ones.
can say there's definitely a reason to keep regular shells for the mortar, for the howitzer. Maybe not so much the field artillery, apart from cost, but with a howitzer, you're not going to be able to destroy anything unless you have standard shells.
Still have that option. And then, actually, this one's a direct question to KFC. Do the flare shells, do they reveal people in shrubbery?
No.
They do not. They do not reveal people in shrubbery, then they obviously don't reveal people behind walls or anything.
Yeah, there was some debate.
That's
No,
what
it reveals them in the same way that daylight does.
Okay.
So, like, if you're when you're running around in the dark, people don't render on your screen when they're in the darkness.
Mhm.
But with the flare, they will. So if you're using binoculars and there's flares on people in the distance, you will see them.
It's more LOS based, right?
Yeah, it's still LOS based.
So it's not, you won't reveal anyone in shrubbery, you won't reveal people behind walls or around corners, and you won't reveal people on the map.
Correct. It just removes the night shroud. Now, that's not to say it will always stay that way. I think there was some internal debate as well about revealing people in shrubs, but for now, it's by design that.
Straight line of sight. All right. Liquid Popsicle, do you have anything else for us? Other than a lot of gas shells?
Nope.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Liquid Popsicle of the infamous 128th Artillery Regiment back in the war. Or at least the 38th. Thank you for joining us.
I appear to have gone deaf. Oh, there we go. I'm
That's
giving
fine,
you a
that's
salute, but sadly you can't see it because it's over radio.
That's okay. Thank you. All right, so up next, joining us here in Zero Dark PressCorps, words as I delay to get the next person. Avitus joining us in here. Avitus of the 82nd Dread Corps. What do you have for us here? Thank you so much for coming on. What do you have for us here? Reflections on the 37th and excitement about the 38th.
Yeah, definitely excitement for the 38th, but I wanted to take you back a couple of callers, back to the discussion about the FMG and and vehicles and things like that, because I had a couple of ideas on how you might be able to make the FMG relevant. The FMGs obviously runs into a lot of trouble, largely due to the fact that frag grenades are so accessible and they're the direct counter to the FMG. So it's never going to be useful in on offensive capability anymore. The only real use I've found for it in an offensive capability is in clearing defenses, but now we have the harvester, even that's obsolete. I think the only way to make the FMG relevant is a couple of ways. You need to make hard points on the map. Like, what I'm talking about is bunkers that are not built, but they're part of the map, where they're designed to put an FMG inside of. For instance, the Jade Cove ramp, if you had a physical pillbox at the top of there, and maybe another one on the other side of the town, for instance, that easily fits an FMG into it to protect it with a roof or something like that, in order to protect it from frag grenades and give it a strong point in which to fire down from, then I think that would make the FMG relevant in a defensive capability. But even defense, I mean, it's lacking in that. That's the only way I can find to use it effectively on its own. But I had another idea when you were talking about vehicles as well, like half tracks and variants and stuff like that. So there's things like the armored car becomes irrelevant later in the war. But I agree with Crazy when he's saying that they're overused and things like that. They cost a lot, like, for what they are, they cost a lot of resources. There's no real point in bringing one to the front line after half tracks are made or after RPGs are made, because they just get evaporated. What I think would work with something like the armored car is if you and the half track and the FMG for that matter, later in the war. So let's say that you have a half track blueprint in your vehicle factory, and you have FMG blueprints in that vehicle factory as well. If you then in turn unlock another unlock in the tech tree, for instance, 14.5 half tracks. What you would require for the 14.5 half track is not a 14.5 half track blueprint. It would be an FMG blueprint and a half track blueprint that would then in turn make the 14.5 half track. If you get what I'm saying by that. The same thing would be said for the armoured car, because although the armoured car is absolutely irrelevant later in the war, there's something that isn't relevant later in the war, which is the tractor. I know it's no longer in the game or whatever. Relics have been taken out, but I think if there was some sort of way of progressing the armoured car into the tractor later in the war, because large tank formations that we're going to be having in the new update, because we will be having large tank formations in the update. The tractor really has a place to shine in those large tank formations, because as a tank escort, a large column tank escort is like it's second to none. Even the half track can't compete with the tractor. And I think if you were to progress the armored car into the tractor later in the war somehow by adding a blueprint or something like that, I don't know, maybe you could have the same way I said about the 14.5 half track.
Are you saying, just to understand, just to make sure I'm getting this right, are you saying that in order to get to a half track, you have to first build FMG? Like these become stepping stones, or no?
No. So what I'm talking about is if you say you have a half track blueprint, you have the option to go and build that half track still. You can still go and build your HMG half track if you want. You can still go and build your FMG if you want. But if you have both of those plans in the vehicle factory and you have the relevant tech tree upgrade as well, you have the option of building a 14.5 half track if you have all the requirements in place.
A 14.5 half track.
Yeah, so it
like the ammunition 14.5.
Yeah, FMG takes 14.5. Sorry, I should have clarified that. But
as opposed to the 12.7.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so maybe the 14.5 wouldn't have 200 rounds like the FMG, so it's got maybe 100 rounds or something like that. But it's still got the stopping power of the FMG mounted on a half track, which makes not just the half track relevant again, but also makes the FMG relevant later in the war, or that 14.5 ammunition.
Is it really the ammunition that's preventing it from being relevant, or is it just the? Go ahead.
No, it's practicality. Like it's like like I said at the start, it's so vulnerable to things like frag grenades and stuff like that, and it's not very mobile. So if it gets flanked, if you like, one of your previous callers said the only way an FMG can be used is if it has overwhelming infantry support. But if it doesn't have overwhelming infantry support, 9 times out of 10, you will have your FMG taken off you, and you will find it firing back at you 30 seconds later. You know what I mean? So that's the reason why they're not found on the front line very often, because people only take one to the front line once, find out that like their squad of 3 can't take on the squad of 6, and then that squad of 6 is then turning the FMG on them as well. You know what I mean? So it's like that's why they aren't used, because they're so easy to capture. You know what I mean? Like the only way you could use, like you could possibly do something with the FMG in an offensive capability would be to like add armor to it in some way, but I think that would just make it like it would defeat the object of the whole thing. You know what I mean? I think it's meant to be used in a defensive capability, but even in that defensive capability, it still needs help. So it needs like defenses that are not built but actually part of the world structure. So well, maybe they are built, so you could build it with a CV, for instance. It might cost 200 BMATs to build this structure, like it'd be like a concrete emplacement that you could then wheel the FMG into and then fire from, and while it's in there, the FMG would be safe unless that emplacement is then, I don't know, shot by a battle tank or something, or like destroyed by a field artillery gun or something like that, and the entire structure would collapse on the FMG, and then obviously the attackers would then take the emplacement, blah blah blah. But I think that's the only way that it could be legitimately used, like throughout the war, is if you had defensive emplacements in key towns, not in all towns. Maybe you have a couple facing either way in abandoned wards. So there's one maybe facing the bridge into Plaza for the Colonials to counter the Wardens, and the same way on the southern bridge for the Wardens to counter the Colonials. And that's the only way that I could ever see it being used effectively. But like I said, I think with the you could really group all of these things that are phased out early in the war into things that could be relevant later in the war, just by having this
the modularity in their production.
Well, yeah, like the combination of blueprints and stuff like that. I think would probably be a good thing. As for armored cars setting off mines, I'm 50-50 on that. Like the armored cars are overused, and I'm not sure if it's weight, then it should be they should set off mines if it's weight. But I mean, if it's magnetic, then not. But it's all irrelevant, really, isn't it? Yeah, I just wanted to get all that off my chest and rattle it all off. Sorry if I didn't give you a chance to speak there, but I'm trying to keep that in my head ever since I heard it a couple of calls ago. So
no, you had a train of thought. By the way, it's good to see you again. It's fantastic to hear you come on here and give your advice and your insight. I want to go back to what you were saying about the idea of having naturally occurring little you call it casemates that are naturally occurring in the terrain. I thought that was an interesting concept.
Yeah. So like for instance, we have mortar houses, for instance, right now, don't we? So like maybe if you don't want because if you don't want to take FMGs out completely, I completely understand why. Because I like that. Even if they're not used very often, I still like seeing the odd FMG. I still like fighting against one or seeing one being used against me or whatever, because it adds that little bit more of variance to the game. You know what I mean? And I think it would be a mistake to take it out. I think it was a mistake to take the relics out, but that's another matter. I think the defensive structures, if you were to like build them, for instance, for 200 BMATs or whatever, the FMG could either be wheeled in, or the FMG could then be like the crate in the mortar house where you put in 10 upgrade parts and you get the mortar on top of the mortar house after you've built it, that sort of thing, but with a more defensive structure with an FMG in it inside of it somehow. I think that could work for that gun.
Awesome.
So that's a lot to take in, but I really appreciate it. It's hard to respond because and it's not your fault, because it's great that you're genuinely thinking about all these things and you have these trains of thought. But yeah.
If I may,
go ahead. Yeah.
Have you thought about writing all of this down?
Yes, I was just about to say, please put this on the subreddit, because on Discord and on these calls, it can be so, you forget, you have a great idea, or like you have a great train of thought and you forget about it.
You guys put this up on YouTube, don't you?
We do.
We do, but
I hate the stunt discussion because my brain can't think for more than 10 seconds because I have to worry about people talking. But anyway.
I rattle that all off like super quick because my brain doesn't work that much either, dude.
Right. What I would say is, although this does go on YouTube, having it written down instead of like, oh, go to this video of the PressCorps and listen to this. Like listen to here's the timestamp on where you can find this. It'd be much easier, and I believe it would get much more eyes on it, and it'd get more attention to it. Because as far as I heard from what you had to say, it's a very interesting idea. It's something that could probably work if nurtured correctly.
Yeah, if I may, do you mind? I'm going to rephrase it just so that it's just to make sure I've understood this correctly. But basically, what you're suggesting is vehicle moderation or modifications that basically transform certain vehicles to like late game counterparts. So the example you gave, primarily the one that most resonated with me was, for example, being able to upgrade the armored car into a AFT.
Yeah, I think that would be something that would please a lot of people, because and something that I need to bring up before I forget, both the armored car and the tractor, if it ever gets put back into the game, both need a top hatch in them with the ability to have a third person in there. They badly need that. They've needed that since the beginning. Please put it in, because like at any stage in the war, those two vehicles are ideal for. The armored car on its own is ideal as a road scouting vehicle. So if you can have a guy with binos on the top of there, that's going to make the armored car useful up until you can upgrade to the tractor. And even then, the tractor is still useful as a limited scouting vehicle for the armored tank column. Something that I wanted to bring up as well, flares, absolutely excellent idea. All of this shit with the artillery, absolutely fucking spot on. I've been waiting for this shit for like months, years. You know what I mean? This type of shit is like, this is spot on for us. But the flare, if we could have some side of like a sidearm that a tank commander can equip to release a smaller version of the flare, just in the vicinity around the tank, that would be amazing. You know what I mean?
I want to throw something a little bit controversial, going back to that AFT comment, to the room and see what you guys think about this, though. I don't know how many of you guys remember playing with the armored fighting tractor, and for those in the audience who haven't seen it before, this is a relic vehicle that was arguably one of the most overpowered vehicles in the game.
It was zippy. It was a zippy little devil. Zippy little devil.
So the controversial statement might be that, like, okay, the armored fighting tractor took 2 players to man, and what you're suggesting is that we'd be able to upgrade like a armored car into something like this. But wouldn't that create a situation that we saw in those wars, where there almost seems to be no purpose to having infantry on the ground at all? Where you have a bunch of armored vehicles with anti-structure capability, and then a bunch of armored fighting tractors with anti-infantry capability, and it was like we saw entire units of 20 to 30 players without a single boot on the ground.
I mean, I can tell you from experience, and this is 2 years of experience in screening for large tank columns. Crazy. Like, there is always a need for infantry boots on the ground. There is no exception, and there's never been a patch in which that hasn't been an exception. Like, the problem with the armored tractor is that you put it in at the start of the war. That's the problem with the armored fighting tractor. There was no other problem with it at all. If you'd have put it in after RPGs got brought out, then there's a counter to it. The problem with the armored tractor, and what made it so overpowered, was because the only thing to face it for the first 30 days of the war or so was sticky grenades, and it was faster than an infantry who was aiming a sticky grenade could get it. I think this was back when sticky grenades only had a limited range. I think.
Yeah, I think so.
You brought out the sticky grenade range increase to counter the armored fighting tractor, I think. Correct me if I'm
possible.
wrong.
I think that's what it is too. And honestly, that's it's hard to it's very difficult to assess all of the relic vehicles, just because their introduction at the very beginning and their introduction at such a high frequency almost negated any use of any of the other vehicles in that in those particular wars. So it's hard. It really is hard to. It's bad because I actually really like the idea of it. It's just that one thing kind of shot itself in the foot. Go ahead.
It's accessibility as well, because you see, the thing is, like, think about how we got armored fighting tractors before. We just found them at the side of the road or sticking out of the center of the road, and we just send a guy. 82DK. Oh, there's an armored fighting tractor over there. Oh, we'll send the recovery team over there. We'll get that one, put it in the depot. Blah blah blah. You know what I mean? And it was just, we had 20 of the things waiting there. You know what I mean? It's.
Yeah, Crazy had a good point, because I do remember actually. At least I remember Dr. Ponsonby telling me this, that there were like roving gangs of 5 armored fighting tractors just by themselves. I do remember hearing those stories, and it was an absolute nightmare because there was nothing to go.
I do remember. I actually have a war story related to those tractors. If you have a sec.
Yeah, I will just say the one problem is that the fact that there were even 5 at all in a region.
That's
was
the
the,
thing.
was the problem. Go ahead.
They were showing up ridiculously. They had a high rate of appearance as opposed to the relic truck, which was also coveted and is still somewhat coveted by most Lottie players. They want that back, by the way.
I think you should get it back.
So you're all saying you want more scarcity, is what I'm hearing.
No, wait, hold on.
From the
I did not do a report on how this is affecting Siva and Isaiah for nothing.
20 to 1
There are
relic vehicles.
protests.
20 to 1 relic vehicles.
40 to 1.
What I remember explicitly from my time as an infantryman was after about a week in game of these relic vehicles popping up and people just digging them out. People were like stockpiling them like mad. And then when it came to doing operations before we had half tracks, you could just push with the armored tractors, and it was almost a ridiculous, absurd Clown World-esque sort of fighting, because you would see literal clown cars rolling up onto a defensive structure and just blast everything away with their pea shooters, and nobody could do anything because the AFTs were too fast.
Yeah.
Those things were
Even
like
off
just
road.
gremlins. Oh my goodness.
Even
I mean,
off
that's
road,
what they
quite
should have
heavy.
been called, was gremlins.
I think I want to. Sorry, Avitus. Just because we're on this train of thought, and we'll end the call soon, and we'll end with Avitus. I think shout out to I Saw Bear. I think he made a post. This was during the big relic vehicle controversy of 2019. But it was he was saying that relic vehicles aren't bad. The problem is that there was the frequency. He was expecting something more like where each relic vehicle, like the location on the map. I'm thinking all this from memory. So Bear, if you're in the audience, please get in here and whatnot. He was saying that each relic vehicle would be like a hard point that would be fought over for like a half hour or something, that had to be excavated with like 2 CVs for 15 minutes or something. Or something like that. Something that made it worth.
Yeah, I get what he's getting at with that.
Yeah.
I understand what he's getting at with that, totally.
Maybe not those exact details, but something to, something make it worth as well, as opposed to digging it out with a hammer in 20 swings, or that's an exaggeration.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
you know what I'm talking about.
everything that we've talked about with the armored fighting tractor so far has been, what you've got to remember is all of these stories, they're from the start of the war, before we even had half tracks, before we even had RPGs to deal with them. I'll say it again, the problem with the tractor was not the tractor, it was its placement and its placement in the timeline of the war.
Also, I would say any relic vehicle. Just because it's so hard to make an assessment on them.
Yeah, I mean, buses and trucks, I wouldn't say were a big factor. I think they were just quality of life for people. And
Sure.
In the case of
The buses are amazing.
Yeah, the buses.
Sorry, Avitus, go ahead and finish up. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. The buses have won me over a little bit, especially with the new spawn system. Absolutely fucking spot on with that as well. Well done. The new spawn system, the buses are actually going to be useful. So thank you for that. Yeah, I'll just finish up by saying, please reconsider putting the armored fighting tractor back in, but as a late game tank support, maybe add some requirements to it to make it harder to get or something like that, so that you don't have like 15 of the things rolling around. You make them, as hard as a light tank to get or something like that. You know what I mean? But that type of thing, I think it really has a place in end game war. I think it could be useful, and especially a real good upgrade to the armoured car. So thank you for having me, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure as always.
Yeah,
I'll look forward to seeing you in 38. Hopefully you're not fighting for the heretics.
We'll see.
I'm fighting for the heretics.
Yeah.
Don't
Avitus,
fight. We
thank you.
Report. You have a good one.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of comments to make before we
Sure, and we'll go on to Rhodes. I see you in the channel, old buddy, old pal. But yeah, go ahead, Rod.
Couple of things. One, we talked about the whole line of sight and whatnot with the flares and stuff. My question is, and this is a question for you, KFC, and I don't know if anyone else has this question, or if it's already been asked throughout this Zero Dark PressCorps. The whole vehicles are visible at all times. is that something that's going to continue? Is that something that's going to depend solely on vision cones? Because let's say, for example, when it comes to an open field, it makes sense to have vehicles be 100% visible at all times. But when it comes to urban combat, setting up a trap with a couple of light tanks in an alley, waiting for an enemy convoy to come through, this idea that, well, yeah, it's interesting to have, supposedly like this kind of echolocation of knowing where these vehicles are depending on their sound. Maybe that's what the design and the mechanic stand for. But is it something that works for the fun, or is it something that works against the fun of Foxhole? Maybe that's the question I want to ask.
It's bothered me as well. There's been a couple of times in the past where it was really a nuisance, especially that like you can't even obscure them from like AI defenses. But I don't know, part of me, it's not bothered me beyond that personally, because when you think about when you're in a combat situation, I don't think you'd ever be a soldier on the ground and not know that a tank is coming. And given how like narrow your scope of view is, like even if it's around the corner, like if you can't see it, you still know it's there. And granted, our game we definitely want to move more towards a tactile nature where what you see is what you get. So maybe the better alternative is you can't see it, but you should be able to hear it and be able to tell where it is based on the sound.
Right.
So, but I mean, for me, I'm like, it's not a big issue. But that being said, I know the code for vehicles is extremely old. A lot of it, like when just getting those trucks to work when way back in the pre-alpha, like it was a nightmare. So I know that a lot of that relevancy code is still legacy. So I don't doubt that one day we will come back to it. But I don't know. I honestly haven't heard any discussion on the matter internally.
Thank you. My second thing that I thought about, I did make a post about this, but this is something that I wanted to hear like instant feedback from all of you here. It's the idea of a new ranking system, having ranks.
Yeah, we got another hour here. Go ahead.
I can refrain. We can talk about this afterwards.
That you know what? We'll hold on to that thought, and at the end, we'll get through some callers, and then at the end, we'll go back to the ranking system because there's a lot to be said about that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, all right. But anyway, we'll move on now to Rhodes Go Ever On, ladies and gentlemen. Rhodes, thank you so much for joining me here in Zero Dark PressCorps. How are you?
I'm doing great. Very glad to be here. How are you?
Rhodes, it's been a while.
It has indeed. Hello.
I love your Lord of the Rings reference.
You are, I think, like the third person ever to have gotten that, actually.
Seriously?
Very much, yeah. Not many people are, like, big nerds in the... Like, they like Lord of the Rings the movies, but this is kind of like a little bit of a book reference.
That's the first thing that Gandalf says in the movie, though. He sings that.
Well, okay, a lot of people miss it. Thank you very much for recognizing.
Of course.
Real quick, for those who don't know, Rhodes and I, we go way back. We worked together on the Foxhole Community Boot Camp. And that was a program where we would sit around at the lobby islands and we would just take new people, new recruits, and bring them, put them through the ringer in terms of tutorials. A long tradition here in the Foxhole community. We were not the first, and we are not the last. But for a while there, it's pretty fun.
Certainly not the first. And the group that's currently going on right now, Help, I took a little bit from the break of a game. I took a little bit of a break from the game after that. Came back and saw this huge group of people. They tagged themselves Help like they're a clan, and they do an amazing job at the same thing we did, but they're doing it live. So they're already standing on our shoulders, and I'm very glad that somebody did, and they're doing it so well.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, yeah, did you have anything for us here in terms of reflections on the 37th conflict or upcoming excitement about the 38th?
Yes, in a more abstract way, because we've had a lot of people who come in to talk about different vehicles and the tech tree and the new ammo types that just got announced and such, and that's all really exciting, but I'll leave the combat questions and such to the combat experts. I'm more of a logi person.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have a couple questions, but to whom I address it and how it's phrased depends on how directly I can address the development side of this call.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
He's talking to you.
I'm sorry. Was that the question?
No.
Go ahead.
I'll just continue. I didn't want to interrupt.
Okay.
So, KFC. So you guys have a lot of data on all the previous wars. You guys have seen the ebb and flow of combat and have seen patterns in how wars have been won or lost. Let's say which towns lead to which towns that are liberated or captured from a certain area lead to victory in that area, which ones are taken lead to like the rest of the area crumbling around. With that in mind, how much do you look at that data in terms of balance for future changes to the map? Now, I say that a little bit we know that there's several parts of the balance that is RNG dependent, such as the nodes and the mines that are placed randomly. We know that some of the balance testing, I guess one can say, is limiting which hexes are available in each individual map. But I'm curious if you've looked at like the geography of the maps, specifically like, oh, this river is in this particular case making it or this particular shape making it harder to attack this town, thinking, oh, maybe that should be changed, or bush placements in like a more tactical sense versus like what roads are accessible from certain towns to certain towns. Have you thought about the geography side of map balance, and if you guys are going to change that? I hope that question makes sense.
I have so much to say about that, but I'd actually prefer to hear what everybody else has to say about it first.
I will first state that Foxhole is very unique in that everything about how the game is laid out is that everything is symmetrical and everything is really egalitarian. There's no progression system. There's no unique weapons among the two sides. Except the only exception to that is geography, and I'm actually really surprised that up until very recently that more people haven't been, quote unquote, complaining or parroting more about how about the imbalances that are between the north and the south, or northeast and southwest, et cetera, et cetera. Specifically, the big one is that in the south there is a lot of shrubbery, and people can blend in more, whereas in the north people stick out more, and there's not as much shrubbery or places to hide in. But among all that, that's I'm actually really surprised that now it's getting married. But I guess now's the time. But yeah, go ahead. Anyone else?
So, what would you guys say is the biggest contributor to winning
a war? What is the biggest contributor?
Oh, I have an answer.
Yeah, like what if there's an imbalance, maybe geography, like you said, both sides have the same tech tree and everything. So the biggest difference here is like geography and like the starting locations. What would you guys say is the biggest contributor? If it's a town, or is it a certain kind of geographical feature? Is it bushes? What would you say is the...
Oh, sorry, hold on. Rod is speaking. Go ahead, Rod. Sorry.
Oh, my apologies. Was I cutting someone else off?
No, you weren't. You were actually muted because you were coming in.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Other people were coming in through your microphone. That's fine. Go ahead.
What I would say is, looking at this idea of egalitarianism for both sides. That was a huge thing when the whole RNG of nodes and the positioning of component fields and whatnot. When that started happening, one of the biggest gripes that I saw people having was like, oh, like the colonials have more component yards, the wardens have more sulfur mines, like that kind of stuff. And this egalitarianism allows for tactics and strategy being the defining factors of winning a war. Population issues aside and refining ratios aside as well. What I would say in terms of map and geography would just be like, what is
and speaking in sort of a speed running kind of way, what is the optimal route for logistic work? What is the optimal route for frontline transport? How do you optimize these maps so that they both have the same amount of time that an optimal run, so to speak, from a quote unquote, I know it's not anymore, but let's say a star base to the front. How do you optimize this map so that both sides have the same optimal time that it takes from where you spawn to the front?
Yeah, so
you understand what I mean?
Yeah, going back to KFC's question to the room, so you're saying the roads, essentially. That is the biggest possible disparity between the north and the south,
I'd say, yeah. I mean, the Romans were known for having extremely sophisticated logistical supply lines because of how well they constructed roads.
Mothman, was it you who talked about this a lot? Where it's the Great March down south. That's literally a giant road. This huge piece. I think the only not superhighway, but a highway in the war zone. The Colonials have this highway in the middle of this huge region. That essentially just allows the collies to zip on through and leak into the other regions.
So that was the thing, is in Great March and in adjacent center maps, the biggest defining factor of that terrain is the road, the Great March Road.
The Great March, right?
I call it the Great March, and in particular, that road itself is connected to every single little capillary and artery that's in that sector and every other adjacent sector that's connected to that road. That road goes straight to Abandoned Ward, if I'm not mistaken, or at least the cutoff goes off to Abandoned Ward. And I've noticed that there's no other roads really like it. It's wide, it's got plenty of room for everybody, and it's deadly efficient if you know how to use it properly for logistics.
Yeah, so I think are you in agreement that that's the biggest disparity is roads?
I will agree that the roads, as of late, have been somewhat lacking in terms of its ability to provide rapid support.
Mm-hmm. And mind you, your observation was most relevant back when every single war was north-south, everything unlocked.
Yeah.
This is before we started switching around the starting positions. But yeah, Kovac, did you have an answer to KFC's question?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
That's fine. So for me, it was bush. It was I would say shrubbery and essentially places to hide in for commandos to hide in and ambush logistics. So that would be my answer. KFC, was that a genuine question to the room, or were you leading that into something?
Yeah, no. So it's interesting that you guys find such an emphasis on the roads. But I want to ask a follow-up. Is that because the roads are not wide enough, or is it literally like how direct they are from point to point?
Actually, I kind of want to take that if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, as someone who plays almost exclusively logistics, I'll say, yeah, those roads are super essential. And for what Mr. Jennings was saying, concealment, as far as if you are a tactical team that's in enemy lines taking out enemy logistics, the concealment is very, very critical for their success, I think is the way I want to put it. So with any given road being so essential, when the enemy team is able to shut down a road, that logistics team is already delayed whatever transport was going through that area. Any future transports are going to be delayed so long as that threat is still perceived in that area, whether that group has moved on and they just don't know about it. That's part of the fog of war that comes with the game. But the roads themselves are so critical because that is what drives the efficiency of logistics. And all of Foxhole from day one has been focused on the logistics and the mechanics of war way more than the tactics of it. The tactics are important, but it's not like everyone who plays kind of knows the importance isn't on the gunplay of the game. It is on the mechanics of warfare as a whole.
It's kind of micro strategy versus micro tactics kind of just, oh yeah, here's a firefight, versus macro strategy of, hey, here's where all the supplies are going. That's going to dictate the whole flow of this army.
Exactly. So if a partisan team is able to shut down a road entirely, they get to start dictating how the enemy's war machinery, if I can make a weird analogy there, they can start dictating how the enemy Logi decides to play. That is huge and critical and really cannot be understated how much of an impact that has. Because Logi only really moves at the pace of a road, I don't think it's the size of the road, which is what you were saying, KFC. I think it's the viability of that road. The fact that if one road gets shut off, the next way to get around to where you're trying to get to might be an extra 10-minute detour, or it might even go through a hex or two that you weren't planning on just to make sure that you get the shipment in. I hope that answer kind of makes sense. Anyone else can take it from there.
Yeah, so in that, then a really simple one word answer for you guys then is, which side do you think has the better
Infrastructure?
Yep.
I might be biased because it's easier to, say the grass is greener on the other side, but with the Great March, Colonials have what, it was kind of a slip of the tongue, but it is a super highway compared to anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, this is back when we're assuming this is a standard north-south, everything available war.
Which is something that will happen in
war. It will happen, yeah. And that's going to happen again. So we'll really put that to the test, I guess. Yeah, I think. Well, yeah, grass is greener because literally the grass is green down south, as opposed to all the snow. Yeah, I think the Colonials do have it better. Even excluding the Great March. Funny because I'm finding all these little situations to throw my answer into a wrench.
That's not an easy
Every
answer.
Situation is different.
Yeah, I feel like in Westgate things are a little more gridded, more straight lines. Yeah, I'm just gonna say Colonials off the top of my head, or at least the South has the better infrastructure, the straighter roads. I don't know, Mothman, Kovac.
So yeah, having been up north and fighting up there and trying to do logistics up there before, it's a lot harder to do it up in Callahan's Pass, or even so far north as Warren County, or known now as the Moors. It's because I would say the effectiveness of the roads are just plain dirt, as opposed to the colonial roads, which are mostly paved. The main roads are usually paved.
Is that true for everything outside Great March? Not everything, but for a lot of the roads outside Great March?
If they're not paved, then they're double wide, or they're a little bit. There's less shrubbery to impede progress with partisan activity.
Oh, can I just say? Yeah, can I just say right now, slight aside, but KFC, I think every bridge should be able to two-way traffic. Maybe that's just off the cuff.
Yes.
Because I've seen a lot of situations where there is a crane, and these, they're getting a speed buff in the next upcoming conflict, but a slow-moving crane is halfway through, and then there's another crane coming the other way, and then it's God damn it, which one's gonna take the 5 minutes? Not really, but 5 minutes to go back and then back through. Yeah, every bridge should be two-way from now on, from everything. Always.
So when are we getting cloverleaf structures? That's what I want.
But in keeping with the whole roads for logistics and whatnot, this specifically, what Jennings just talked about with the whole double, the double wide or the two-way bridges, that is absolutely paramount as well. When you have two-way bridges, you increase the importance of said bridges. You increase the importance of holding those bridges. There's a reason as to why people today, they're like, no, we're not going to fight a bridge war or a bridge battle. We're going to go around. Okay? Whereas sometimes in real life, and especially in World War I and II, you got to hold a fucking bridge.
Nijmegen comes to mind.
I mean, yes. I mean, the whole idea of like securing the bridges to the Rhine before they were destroyed. There was a reason for that. Bridges are extremely important.
KFC, yeah. What's KFC? What's your take on this? Are we surprising you with these answers, or do you think we're completely off?
No, surprisingly, I think you're pretty close to how we feel about it. I'll let you know. Like I said, I have a lot to say, so cut me off if I go on too long. But back when we did the island maps for the first time, we noticed that what was really interesting about player behavior is that objectives that we added to the world never dictated the direction of combat. Which was interesting. Like if we added scarce resources, that didn't change the direction people went. They didn't go down a different road because there was fuel at the end of it. If we added when we added advanced ammo factories, it was the same thing. Like just because this town is more important than the others, it didn't change the direction that players naturally went. Players always went down the road that was closest to, that was going to be the most direct route to the next town. So we noticed right away that these roads were actually dictating the flow, the entire flow of the, and that's why a lot of the time you'll see, like even though the resources are random, even though the towns get changed every war, people are still fighting down the same roads, which was brought up earlier, like when they were fighting for Overlook Hill, when Spots was in here. He's like, why are they going up Overlook Hill when the Solace Gorge is wide open and there's no defenses at all? It's interesting that players, even when faced with the very clear strategic optimal solution to go around, they never do. They always go the closest route, even if it's the hardest way. So for us, it was a matter of for like when it comes to designing maps, we always try to keep that in mind, that the areas we want to focus the most on were the areas that we knew players were naturally going to be directed down. And it was actually a big part of the inspiration for the map Lochmoor. It's like a web of roads where there's actually where there's multiple routes that are all directly, you can get in there easily. But you'll notice that even with all these different roads to get into town, people still come down the same goddamn road. West March is like the #1 route for the Wardens to attack from, and the Colonials will always come down that the left road along the river. So I don't know. I guess it's interesting that I don't know how we're really going to change that. With the double wide bridges, I want to just touch on that point real quick. I actually disagree with the double wide bridges. I know that has been brought up before in the dev channel as well, that they really should be able to put 2 vehicles across it. And that makes sense from a realistic point of view, but gameplay-wise for me, I actually like the fact that there's always a bit of a traffic jam at the bridge, because that, to me, increases their significance for both partisans and for logistics. Is just like in real life, bridges were bottlenecks, right? Even if there's no enemy presence there, it's a bottleneck of logistics, and I don't think it causes enough of a frustration for us to really worry about it, when at the same time, I think it does add a great deal of content. Like, I can't count the number of times where we would always be sitting on some obscure road in the middle of nowhere and thinking to ourselves, hey, maybe if we go down the road a bit, we'll find this bridge and we can sit on it. Like, the bridge was always that centerpiece of conflict for me. So I don't know, that's just my take on it.
Honestly, I wasn't even thinking in a strategic or combat sense. I was literally only thinking, because the only times I've ever actually had problems with bridges is when it's always in a peaceful situation. No, not not a combat, unit in sight. It's literally always just, yep, we met in the middle here, and now one of us has to back up, and it's gonna take another 2 minutes, and it's those small things that add up over time, that it happens every other bridge cross. I don't know. It's a small thing. I don't know if it's worth going through every single bridge and double widening them. Winding them to 2 lanes, but that's actually what it was actually way more annoying than strategic, than an actual strategic thought.
More for convenience of use, ease of use, is what you're saying there.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to point something out on that. I think it's rather interesting how the answer to the general question has been, like, geographically the most important feature has been roads, and specifically pointing the example of the double wide road down in the Great March, and yet the first requested feature, what everyone is okay with, is a double wide bridge. And I think that speaks more volumes for the importance of the roads and how effective or how vital they are to dictating the machinery of the war. That correlation speaks volumes for the logistical process more than how important the bridges themselves are. I really hope that correlation made sense.
I'll even go so far as to say that it does, yeah. It kind of confirming what KFC's observation and the dev team's observation was. It's not even so much that, it's not so much that people are lazy. It's that they don't want to go through the logistics headache of, yep, we got to do 3 logistics trips to fully supply this outpost all the way around. I don't want to do that. Let's just push towards the next closest town, because that's going to be the easiest to supply. That's going to be the easiest thing to, the most straightforward thing to look at even. So, yeah.
Well, I don't even think it's related to logistics. I think it's actually more a symptom of the frontline problem. It's like players on the front line, they just want to run to the closest combat. They don't care necessarily about winning. They just want to get into the fight as fast as possible. So they'll just run down the road in the direction. But what I want to see more of is the logistics players actually taking command of that, because they have that authority, and we've seen this done with 82DK in the past.
You do?
Yeah. You totally do. If for example, if you had a Logi team that was just not supplying that road, if you had a Logi team that said, fuck it, we're going to Solus Gorge instead, and you built a fob in that direction, and you just kept building fobs in that direction and supplying them with soldier supplies, slowly but surely, that becomes the closest front, right? It's the place where they're quickest going to get into the action, and those players are naturally going to move toward it. And we're hoping with this new spawn mechanic, this new spawn system, that will be even more true. If this is something that I think a lot of players have overlooked from the patch notes, but like the cargo ships are now a player constructed fast travel point, and that's huge. If you think about that, like if you're trying to make a push on some unprotected front, and you drop a cargo ship on it, now there's brand new players with no concept of what's going on in this game who have a giant flashing sign that says spawn here. As a Logi player who put that cargo ship together, you're dictating where the front line is going to be, and I think that that's really cool. Doing fobs doesn't necessarily do that because it doesn't create fast travel points, but between the frontier forts and the cargo ships, totally, you can dictate the direction of the combat, and I want to see us push more into that, because I want to see more intelligent strategic decisions, so that we're not locked to these roads that are taking you from the closest town to the closest town.
Mm-hmm.
Can't help but agree.
Rhodes, thank you so much for joining us. Did you have anything else?
I guess more of a wish than anything else. Actually, on the last little bit of what KFC was saying, I think and this kind of goes to everyone in the audience, for all the people who are playing and maybe leading or a part of your own clans or organized groups, or you're the one who wrangles all the puppies together. Dictating the course of battle, whether you're going to go down a road as the path of least resistance, or if you're going to go around it to flank, or if you're going to go around a piece of geography to hit a town sideways. The way that gets done is through communication and organization. And the way to get that intelligent, strategic decision-making happening is coordinating with the rest of your faction. And that means being open to new ideas. I guess the last bit I want to say is more of a wish to the rest of the community that we're all a little more open to new ideas, interesting ideas, like on the battlefield, and try something new out. If it doesn't work, all you've lost is one shirt. Hey, we can, per person, we can, supply Logi and get some more of those. But if it works, boom, you take a town, you may take a hex, who knows? So yeah, communication, teamwork, all that good stuff. Thank you very much for having me.
You said my dog whistles, organization and communication. God darn it.
Absolutely.
It's good to have you back, Rose.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hope to see you on the battlefield.
Indeed. Yep.
All right, going to Rod. You know what? I feel bad because there's some people in the call queue that are no longer in the channel. But Rod, ranking system. If you can switch back to that for a moment. You're talking about a revamping maybe the ranks and the leveling system, or just the ranks?
Both, actually.
Sure.
It was pointed out, the whole leveling system actually was pointed out to me during a discussion on the Reddit post. Just one more thing to expand on. Rhodes said this right at the end. The whole communication and teamwork thing. And I think, and this is not a jab at any clans. This is not, this is said with the utmost respect and care and love for this community. It's simple as this: if you're not having fun, you are not playing Foxhole the right way. And here's the thing: playing Foxhole the right way is a very broad category of hundreds and thousands and infinite subcategories, but they all come back to a simple question: are you having fun? And if the answer is no, then the way you're currently playing it, whether you know it or not, doesn't fall under playing it the right way.
If I can put that into reality, because it's a very abstract idea. I have seen potential leaders say, yeah, you over there, can you guard this road back here? And then it's like, we're about 300 meters away from any kind of activity right now. Yeah, but there's a possible partisan back here. Can you just guard it? You can't do that. You can't expect people to sit there. You need to actually provide them fun. In fact, I will even go so far as to say, being a quote unquote military leader in Foxhole, you have the unique problem of making sure your soldiers have fun. In a real war, that's not a goddamn option. But in Foxhole, in the digital war, you have that responsibility of making sure your team, your group has fun.
I would go and say that you are more right than you realize, because you're saying like, oh, making sure your players are having fun is not something you can do. No. You're handling their morale. As a leader, you're handling their morale. If they're not having fun, their morale goes down. It's simple as that. You are more right than you understand.
I've often said when I was leading Pug, it's like when you're a leader of a major clan, you're 90% entertainer, 10%.
Absolutely. Okay, now when it comes to the ranking system, it's a very simple idea, but since Foxhole is an MMO, that's what it postures itself as. Here's what I propose: ranks used as MMO titles. Now, hear me out. For example, in RuneScape, you can have Fart Knocker 76, the blank, and that blank is the true or the brave or yada yada yada. Now, imagine in Foxhole, okay. Now let's say that you're a frontline fighter. That's what you love to do, and you do it really well. Now, what if you could have the game keep track of statistics of your operational success in the front line, also known as PvP? That would allow for players to increase their rank as combat operatives. Now, let's say that you're a logistics driver. You drive ready-made supplies and you take them to the fronts. The game already tracks that sort of stuff and awards you with commands to give to other people. So why not instead have the game award you logistical/supply ranking to display your effectivity? My point is this: I'm currently a lieutenant. I'm really good at frontline operations and holding the lines against anything that comes my way. I thrive in that kind of environment, and I love it. I'm a lieutenant because I'm good at frontline fighting. That's how I earned my commends. I'm not a great scrapper. I'm not a great techie. I'm not a great logi driver. Nobody in their right mind should listen to me instead of a more experienced logi player who might just so happen to be an officer cadet. Same thing as listening to some dumbass major who can't hold a front line to save his life, but just so happens to have his rank due to commend trading. But look, I'm aware that nobody's forced to listen to anyone in the game, but having people display their preferred or highest rank allows for easier and more intuitive cohesion between faction players. Now, for example, somebody joins in and is like, oh man, I need to do Logi, but I don't know how to start. Wait a minute, there's a logistical commander. I know that because of his displayed rank. I'll talk to them for help or, something that he would have me do. Or I'm at the front. I'm so excited, but what the fuck am I doing? Oh, there's a frontline commander. I know that because he has the displayed rank. So the game keeps track of your activities, and you gain rank based on how long/how well you've been performing your specific or preferred function. We can even keep all of the same ranks as of right now, just add logistical, frontline, or scrapping, and yada yada in front of each of the ranks. So your frontline corporal, your frontline commander, your frontline sergeant. I believe that this would make it so that the whole game becomes easier and more approachable for everyone. It allows for randos to have their presence felt in the game, even without the support of a clan behind them, and sometimes in spite of not having a clan. Now, the other thing that I thought about is like, the whole levels thing. How do we work with that? So one of the things that someone talked about is this, for example. One issue with that, Jason1143, he said, one issue that I have with that is, what do I do if a job I do is not one of those? Like, what if I'm a scout or a partisan? And so it's hard to track my contribution with stats. You know, my idea is that, like, why not track it with time spent behind enemy lines? This is not something that's a fixed idea. This is something that can evolve based on the necessities of the war. There's hundreds. There's so many different roles that you can fulfill in Foxhole, and I think that's the most incredible thing about it. Because you have this amount of freedom, because this is a sandbox, you have the opportunity to fight and contribute however you want to contribute. So having that display, being able to just have people, quote unquote, instinctually know who to turn to in any given situation, I believe that that's something that's going to help both factions and just the game in general. And it prevents, like, again, nobody's obligated to listen to anyone, but I'm going to have a lot more chances of people listening to me if I'm a fucking brigadier than if I'm a fucking staff sergeant. So people earn their ranks through a lot of tough work, and sometimes ranking up is amazing because you get one last command after a really grueling day of work, and you rank up, and fuck, man, I am very proud of being a lieutenant. But nobody should listen to me just because I'm a lieutenant when there's a much better Logi driver or a Logi quartermaster, so to speak. So giving people the chance to be, the forefront of what they do well in a way that allows people to see how well they do it without having to fucking, like, oh, you gotta earn respect. No, just streamline that, man. Just make it so that people collaborate more easily. Just make it more seamless.
The way I'm picking up on it is kind of like what people are asking for uniforms to be, except instead it's just transferred now to the titles and ranks. Yeah. So, like, instead of having a scrapper, I don't know how you'd have that scrapper uniform, just have a title. You can at least easily switch out if you'd like. Kind of like an unlock. Kind of see that in Call of Duty, I think, or PlanetSide 2. They have that. Actually, I think you can now in. I think now with the zones, you would be able to track how much time you have spent behind enemy lines, because you could just possibly track. I don't know if this is even possible in the API, but you can track. If you're like two zones behind. You can already track what zones belong to each team, so that's 100% possible. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not in the weeds of the combat effectivity, like, and don't even show it to the players, because I know the whole kill-death ratio is something that Clapfoot doesn't want the players to know. Like, that's not the most important thing, but just track it. Because if you're a really good frontline fighter, then people should know that. That just allows for easier communication without the need for me going like, hey, I know what I'm doing. Like, no, just look, I can do this shit. You just follow me. I got this. I don't know. KFC, Moth, Kovac, what's your reactions to that?
We've done so much.
Really good idea.
Continue.
I really don't have much to add to that. Maybe you could add into the uniform idea somehow.
Maybe. I would love that too. I really want to run around with the roughneck symbol on my arm. Just saying.
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer with where the dev team is at too, because that's a big part of the reason why the uniforms keep getting big part of the reason why the commendation system hasn't seen an overhaul. Because honestly, it's like this is what we're ultimately talking about is personal progression. And we've always said as part of our core vision of this game is that we don't want personal progression such that a new player is outclassed by an old player.
Right.
There's nothing more frustrating than entering a game 2 years late and then feeling like you just can't compete with the people who've been there forever.
People are 27.6% faster than you inherently. People have 55% more aim or better accuracy inherently. Yeah, I get.
And that's something that I completely agree. Like that should not be a thing, but Foxhole inherently has this very subjective kind of way it works. Faction loyalty exists because you meet friends there and you spend time in it. It's a very tribalistic thing. So when you have that working for you, I think that can be one of the most effective things in the game.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. Like even Blazer here said, bring back reprimands, but actually there's a core argument. Like the only ranks that have ever mattered to me in any game at all has been ranks you could lose. And that's true in like any like competitive game like Counter-Strike where you start competing and you get into those competitive games and you get like your new rank. Whoa, you got a Master Sergeant or whatever the fuck it is. The double AK. And then you lose it the next day because you had a string of bad games and it hurts and it actually feels like something. But what's compelling to me about that scenario is that when I tell my friends in real life, I'm a DMG, they go like their jaw drops like holy crap, you're actually really good at this game, and it actually means something to them even if they don't play the game. And that's something that I'd love to see for Foxhole. But the downside to that is if you have ranks that you can lose, it introduces toxicity. Players that if you can lose your rank, then you care a lot about the people on your team doing well, and if you do and they're screwing up, it creates this situation where you're almost you against the team. And that's not good either. So there's this really weird spot where we're in where we really want to create a ranking system that matters. We want to tie that into like uniforms so that when you're a sniper, for example, in a bush and you're shooting at bad guys and you see a guy in an officer's uniform, that you're actually taking out somebody important. And that should mean something, but how and why? And there's so many questions that follow with that we just keep deferring it. And ultimately, like that's not a small part of the reason why the uniforms keep getting deferred. And let's say like we do eventually want to action this. I'd say it would be after we started implementing, say, things like clan support, right? Like regiment support. That sort of thing I could see having easy tie-ins to a ranking system. Like how does that work? And we've already tried exploring a couple of those ideas, but ultimately nothing came back as solid. So we're still looking at it. But definitely before 1.0, we're gonna have to force ourselves, similar to the port base. We're just gonna have to pull the trigger on something and just watch it go.
Yeah, I would say for regiments, would it be possible to do custom ranks? Custom internal ranks, so you can make whatever ranking system you like in that regiment. Would you be against that? So it gives regiments the ability to customize whatever kind of ladder they want people to climb, as long as it's confined to that regiment alone.
Yeah, no, not at all. I think that that's something that's certainly possible. I just I have a lot of other questions about how to tie that into the rest, but that's part of the problem.
It's tough. It's tough because rank and uniforms really matter when everyone's on the same page in one massive army. But this is an archaic. This is anarchy. This is anarchy on the front lines. Everyone's doing their own thing, and you can't stop them. You can influence them. Yeah, but you can't order someone to do something.
And ultimately, it's weird because the things that are worth ranking up for are a lot of the times the things that nobody wants to do, or the things we don't like. It's easy to be like, okay, well, if you deliver these supplies, you get rank points, and then blah blah, you get your new rank. But it's that one's easy. But what about the guy who sat on a road cutting off their logi trucks for 6 hours, but only killed 3 trucks? but destroyed that critical supply line that everybody's praising for, that you're a hero because you cut off their soldier supplies, which is what allowed them to take abandoned ward. Like you easily did more work than all the people on the front line, and you should be rewarded for that. But how does the game tell that was an important moment?
I mean, yeah, I agree with you. There is a possibility of, like, for example, having something that measures the activity on a specific road. I mean, management games do that all the time. So, for example, it would be possible to see, for example, if a specific player gets to a road that has heavy colonial activity, okay, from point A to point B. If that is the case, then having that player arrive there, and shortly after that movement, that traffic, for example, if it goes down, there is a possibility of just going like, oh, well, it went down because of this player. But then again, you have to extrapolate for a lot of factors. So I completely agree with you, but I believe that there is an opening there that can be exploited for this.
We'll go our last caller here for the evening. We have the Assault Support Services very own Lag. Welcome. Welcome. You're the last. Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for calling. Thank you for joining Zero Dark PressCorps. Can't wait for the 38th conflict. I'm gonna wait for a couple of seconds to see if he reconnects.
Also,
I almost had my hands on the credits. There's
a little bit of feedback coming from you, Mr. Jennings.
No, that's me. I'm twiddling with the microphone.
Oh, okay.
That's fine. Well, we had. Oh, there he is. Hello, Lag. Can you hear us? Lag, can you? Well, he's lagging.
Okay. Yeah. I can hear you.
He's alive. Oh, he's gone.
This has
See,
been
he's
a
using the
presentation of the
Roughnecks'
PressCorps.
the patented
Foxhole Flash is hosted.
system of cans and wires. That's how it works.
All right. One more time.
You alive?
Nope.
And he's dead.
No. I feel bad. Hey, Lag. If you can hear us, call in next time, and you'll be our first one, no matter what. You'll be the first one, guaranteed. I'll put you in as the first one in. That's all right. Yeah, he's typing right now. That's fine. And I know we've disappeared also from the visual. That's fine. You have to restart this. Okay. Yeah, we've gone over 2 hours here now, so I think we're gonna call it there. Live, you're gonna be the first one. Remind me, you're gonna be the first one in for the 38th post 38. But I want to thank everyone here for joining me in this incredible 2 hours. Mothman, Rod, Kovac, KFC. Thank you so much, and all the people who called in. One more try.
Can you hear us?
Hello.
Okay, we might actually do it.
I don't know what happened. That was pretty odd.
That's fine. Nope. All right. Good night. Credits.
This has been a presentation of the PressCorps. Foxhole Flash is hosted by PressCorps Chief Editor Geoffrey Jennings. Maury Sharp is the Colonial Correspondent. Dr. Oliver Boland Ponsonby Esquire is the Warden Correspondent. And Ken Rister is the handsome host of Casualties. Make sure to follow the PressCorps on Twitch radio services, YouTube motion pictures, Instagram photography, and the Twitter Telegram service at PressCorps Games. For more info, including newswire access and interview opportunities, visit PressCorps World Headquarters through the Discord link below.